Welcome back. We were discussing the acceptance speech of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was declared winner of the October 26th election. And we now move to the next issue, which is what should Kenyans expect? Because it's been really dramatic between August 8th and today, the 30th of October. And I want to start with Professor Munene. What should Kenyans expect beginning tomorrow?
I think there will be a petition. I understand one is already filed or being filed already, so that one is expected. So we shall have another period of entertainment by lawyers in the Supreme Court, and then we hope that some of the strange things that happened that time would not feature again. The claim that the Supreme Court registrar might have messed up something, I hope we will not that everything will be quite in the way it should be. And let me add something, Linus. The judges, I think, like everybody else, will be very careful. They don't want to be caught flat-footed. In this election, Part B, which Maraga ordered, the Supreme Court has been insulted by Raila Odinga and his team when they said they will not accept to obey a court order. There is no time that Maraga said Raila has permission to order Chebukati around. There is no time when the court said that IBC should take orders from anyone. No time like that. It ordered a fresh election in 60 days and ordered IBC to do the election, nobody else. Now for somebody to turn around and then say there should be no election, actually even force people not to vote. The violence that we saw in some parts of Migori, of Kisumu, of Siaya, is an indictment to somebody who goes around defying a court order and expect sympathy. It is unfortunate that somebody like Raila Odinga, who is prominent, is a prominent politician in Kenya.
We'll actually substantively discuss Raila Odinga as a subject matter, so hold on to your thought. Let me just go to Miguna on what to expect from tomorrow onwards.
Yes, Linus, a good question. I want to say, first of all, that my friend Waekwa Nyoike, who I believe is one of the best lawyers in this country, has just told me that Article 115.6 automatically makes the law or the law operational within 14 days. So I want to reinforce that.
That's the new electoral laws, yes.
Yes, your question is important, and I would like to disagree with my friend about disobedience of the law. There was no order against Raila Odinga or NASA. So we want to be very clear. You can't disobey an order which does not exist. There was no order which he had to obey. But let me tell you what we expect. Number one, yes, there will be petitions. There will be more than one. Two, there will be constitutional applications to the Supreme Court, and there is already one by Okia Omtata, challenging the validity of these elections in view of Justice Odunga's judgment that was irregularly stayed at night, which said that the gazettement of the returning officers, all the returning officers across the country, was done illegally by the IEBC, which means that all these returning officers that presided over the election presided over an illegal exercise. So it's not an election. Three, there will be people's resistance against this dictatorship and the illegitimate government. Because as you recall, about 20 million registered voters exist in Kenya. And when you are telling us that about 7 million voted, what percentage is that for those who did maths? That's less than 2/3 of the country which means 2/3 have not given this man calling himself the president legitimacy. And I will not recognize him as president because he's not. Number 4, the NASA coalition has said that they will move forward towards a people's assembly. I think that will crystallize in the coming days. Then out of the petitions and the applications, the Supreme Court, in my humble view, and having practiced law, having looked at the evidence so far adduced in the public domain, this exercise will be nullified by the Supreme Court. And we will go over the same process again. But this time, this is what the Supreme Court will do, in my view. 1, it will find people having committed specific offenses because they completely, arbitrarily, whimsically disobeyed a court order which said, don't just conduct an election, any election. Do it in accordance with all the applicable statutes and the Constitution. And that do not repeat the mistakes that you made, which implied that the IEBC and Chebukati should have corrected all the errors, the irregularities, and made sure that they normalized all the illegalities, none of which happened. And of course, people are downplaying the exile of Dr. Akombe. That will be critical. Mr. Chebukati's long memo will be critical. Mr. Chebukati's statement last, was it on the 3 days before the election?
8 days.
8 days was very critical. So this is what we are expecting. As you have seen in Kawangware, as you saw in Migori, as you've seen in Bungoma and many other parts of the country, the people have said no.
Right.
Yes.
Scheaffer?
I think, for lack of better words, I would just say petitions is a must. Petitions we will see, and an array of them. Because there are so many holes that have been poked in this process alone, that the same court that got us here and told us to go and conduct an election, like Miguna said, we will look at these holes and questions will be asked. And people have to come up and be held accountable. That is one thing. Because you can't count like IBC showed us their counting. You can't do maths like that. Those are things that will be questioned. Another thing that will happen is that divisions will get entrenched. And we are a divided country. It is not a lie. We all see it, we all feel it, but now it will all be in our faces. We are a divided country. Because we have seen a section of this country be stereotyped and be profiled and called militia. And I wonder why we would even call another tribe militia just because they're questioning the whys and the hows and the whos are doing what they're doing. It is a problem. And those kinds of things will happen, which is sad for this country. But I remember today somebody said, maybe we need to be a bit more tribal so we can realize that we can't live with each other, that there is no tribe above the other, that we are all equal under the Constitution, that we all must live in a country that recognizes our right to all of us exist. Another thing that will happen is people will organize, and people are organizing deeply. Because there's nothing as bad as having people who have been hurt, and people who have been dehumanized, and people who have suffered injustices, and people who've suffered a ballot injustice the second time round.
So, Scheaffer, organized to do what?
Organized in regards to pushing for credibility, and organized in regards to seeking justice. Because right now, this is an injustice, and people are feeling it. That is why the country is divided. Because people just don't wake up and feel like, I feel disenfranchised because I just feel like it. No. There has to be a series of events that have led to you feeling like that. And right now, this political situation that we are in is bringing that out more vividly. And people will organize to ensure there's a justice that is delivered for this. Yes.
Charles?
Linus, in this environment of doom and gloom, allow me to strike a note of optimism. Some people have said I'm too much of an optimist, but I can't help in this moment being an optimist because I want to look at the big picture, at the long picture. Kenya has gone through a worse crisis, I believe, than the situation it is in now. in 1966 and 69 with the political crisis that affected Luo Nyanza and the rest of the country. In 1990 with the murder of Robert Ouko, the assassination of Jem Kariuki in 1976, in the post-election violence of 2007. We've managed to come out of it. I don't think we have gone as low as we did in some of our worst crises. I think there is a potential for us to go lower, but I think we will not behave as fools to repeat the mistake we repeated. We got into in 2007-08. So one, I do expect that our new constitution of Kenya is slightly more robust than the old one. And I think that the institutions in that constitution, because a constitution is the institutions, the processes, and the laws under it. I think the institutions may stand the test of time. They did manage to arbitrate the first dispute. I think you'll have cases going to court. My personal assessment is that we're in a 50-50 situation. NASA may carry the day, Jubilee may carry the day. And after the 8th August...
I just want to appreciate your optimism, but I'm listening to you very carefully. And among the things that you're saying is your faith in institutions. Just the last 60 days, there are arguments that after the nullification of the presidential election, we never moved to do anything right as a country. And Scheaffer was talking earlier on that the issues in the first presidential election petition are exactly the same ones that are being questioned tonight.
Linus, after the 2007 election, nobody was ready to go to court. Their trust in the judiciary was zero. This time, I think it is consensus among all of us that there will be court cases and both sides are hopeful that they will succeed. That at least is a sign that our institutions are not at the level they were in 2007-08. Right now, you have an electoral commission which, despite all the contestation we've had about it, there was a bit of a common ground that most of the commissioners and the chairman should remain. Actually, the dispute was about the secretariat headed by Chiloba. In 2007-08, nobody wanted to see the Electoral Commission of Kenya after the general election. So you find that the institutions are a bit stronger. We may become so pessimistic, but I was in the middle of my submission. I was saying that first, people will go to court, which means institutions will be brought into the dispute. I think there's also a lot of expectation among Kenyans that their freedom of assembly and right to protest, to picket under Article 37 of the Constitution can bear fruit. And those on the NASA side, when it was caught, did go to the streets and did manage to transform the IBC and get new commissioners. So you'll find also manifestations in the streets. There will be peaceful manifestations. My fear is that there will also be instances of violence. We've seen that.
Peaceful manifestation is not what we have seen.
Yes,
we've seen either looting or police shooting people dead. What we are seeing is not different from what we saw in the 90s.
Actually, you cut me short, and just after you cut me short, I said, I also fear that there are going to be some violent manifestations. But I don't expect, and it is my hope and prayer, and as a Christian, I've been praying a lot for peace in this country and for justice as well. I don't expect the kind of violence that racked the country in 2007-08. We saw how the governor of Kisumu County and the governor of Kericho County came together to preach peace. We saw how the Luhya leaders in Nairobi, after the outbreak of violence in Kawangware, immediately within 24 hours came out to preach peace. So I think there's a very strong, sober community of political leaders, religious leaders, and so on, who keep reminding our country that we cannot dare to go and over the brink of the precipice, as we almost came close to doing in 2007. So I think there'll be manifestations. There may be, unfortunately, some instances of violence, but I expect, and it is my hope, that the non-political voices, the religious voices, the civil society voices, will start recovering their voice and beginning to dwarf the political voices that thrive in division and entrenchment of positions. And finally, my expectation is that there'll be a constitutional moment. There'll be a moment where we'll have a wider dialogue. and discussion about long term. What do we do to correct those fundamental weaknesses in our body politic, in our socio-political framework, that strong sense of alienation we are seeing? I think that long-term discussion may start immediately, but it can only become secure once there is a bit of stability to the current post-electoral dispute situation.
Right, and in your remarks there, you also put it clearly that you're a strong Christian. Quite a lot of Christians to my right-hand side today, a lot of spiritual issues. We go now to Olga.
Yes, Kanjama is a Christian. There was a time we were together in Christian professionals. So, one, there is a psychologist who says that people that have no meaningful livelihoods have no value for life. 80% or more of our youth who are at their prime levels, churned every year by professor here, have no jobs, whether from Jubilee or from NASA. Those youth have no value for life, and they are going to fight in this nation because they have no value for life. All they want is a meaningful form of livelihood, which nobody has given them for a while. So I expect that, whereas we are all praying that we do not shed blood, and that justice will prevail in this nation, I know that we must, as Kenyans, truly interrogate this fact that we have youths that have no meaning, no value for life. Two, petitions are obvious. Many will be there, of course. The judges already helped us by saying Miguna said that the arrows, the pews were illegal. So we will just go, people will go to court. The case before, and the other thing that I know will happen is that Kenyans have reached the end. When I say Kenyans, I mean at least a minimum of 70%. For 50 years, Kenyans have borne this narrative of being told, Kenya ina wenyewe, agree and move on. Not anymore. I don't even want to agree and move on myself. I am aging. I do not want to leave my children to be subdued by one tribe in Kenya who keep saying that they control this nation and force themselves on leading Kenyans. So I am expecting, and I'm going to, and I believe that Kenyans this time, and when I say again Kenyans, I mean that 70+%, are going to demand justice in this nation, and they are truly not going to relent. Right. I want to finalize by the case of the registrar that Professor talked about. I was not just at Bomas, but at the Milimani courts when we were doing verification. It is so unfortunate that Kenyans love lying and destroying the career of other people. The registrar, we were there with Jubilee seated on one table like we are seated now, verifying those Form 34As and 34Bs. And we all agreed on a formula that we all checked, everybody checked, and we agreed on the irregularities. So where did the registrar come? Poor girl must be protected.
Actually, Olga, we may not have time to revisit that first matter when you're talking of more petitions coming up. And I want to give you an opportunity because you were not part of the panel last week. One of the issues that we discussed was whether US politicians in the opposition and Jubilee are converting the courts to a babysitter, basically.
We are not converting the courts to babysitters. Neither are we converting in parliament. In fact, I am hoping that Miguna, someone will go to court and demand that that parliament which passed those laws that you and Kanjama agree that have already been made laws were passed by parliamentarians that were not legally constituted. 2/3 gender rule has not been observed already, as we see. So that should have been taken care of. The problem we are facing is, what else do we do, Linus? When people want to control the country, for us as NASA, what else do we do? Do we, in Kawangware, from Saturday until today, people are literally being massacred. My own pastor has just sent me a message to say that there are gunshots now, as we speak, in Kibera. Narok has banned this evening because others came to celebrate Jubilee, the stealing of elections, and others are saying, how can you celebrate rigging when we know we did not vote? The country is burning and nobody wants to face it. So I pray that we do not go to the levels of 2007. But what else can we do at least to prevent more bloodshed in this nation? We just have to go to these courts. Otherwise, the reality is, what should be happening now is that Raila should be sworn and leading this nation because he won. But because nobody will do that, we will go to court and we will demand our right, and we will demand vehemently, without apology.
Okay, let me go to Gabriel Muthuma. And just a reminder of the question, because you tend to take it over from where Olga left it.
Yeah, he answers me.
The question, Muthuma, is... The question, Muthuma, is what to expect. From now going ahead.
Okay. That's a hard one. Well, I think we've all agreed in unison, Linus, that somebody will challenge the election. And I don't want to preempt what will happen at the Supreme Court. Somebody told me it could be 50-50. We have to wait and see. But what I know for sure, and one thing I believe, Kenya will not burn, contrary to the messengers of doom. We've been through this path. The words of Johan Kriegler are still very fresh in the minds of many people. The other thing I believe also quite fervently is that the youth of this nation are starting to understand things. They may not be there yet, but they are starting to understand. And the quote that I'll give them today is that the tranquility of a nation is based upon the premise of a very simple truth. Nothing is important in a democracy than an informed electorate. And we lie once we become informed. The only thing we can run away with in this country is to understand devolution. The minute we understand devolution and we partake of it and we hold it as an immediate truth that can actually bring balance in this country, trust you me, as we move into the future, the years ahead, that seat of the presidency will lose meaning. And I hope it does one day. Because the counties will have known how to build up economies. That's why, Linus, I go back to an informed electorate. I think that is where we need to spend our energy. The youth, like they say, of a country are the trustees of posterity. They need to understand where this country is headed. And again, I repeat, if people are going to turn themselves into militias, you cannot, you cannot help but allow them to choose a forest. What we are praying is that they don't come and hurt the innocent Kenyans. Let them choose a forest, and the government can organize KDF like they did with the Matakoi, and they can go to a place like Mount Elgon and fight out there, leaving the innocent Mwananchi to continue with their business. Because if you have chosen to live or lead another life outside the Constitution, really, there's very little a government can do. But
Gabriel, is this talk of militia? I know it was started by Deputy President William Ruto. Is it founded on any facts?
It is actually founded on the example of what a resistance is, if you asked me. The few resistance movements that we know, which other one do you know, Linus? I think you only know probably one or two in Africa. Don't quote me Europe. No, in Africa. Can you mention any other apart from Kony? The other one we know so close to home.
The ruling party of Uganda is called the National Resistance Movement.
But you see, what I'm talking about here is a government. We're talking about a government and a cut-off. You see, legitimacy is not for you to say it's not legitimate. Go to a court of law and win that case.
We will win. We won.
All right. Yeah. Then once you win, then let's come and talk about it. You cannot hand off the way people have been talking you have two governments which you want them to be legit. It's not captured anywhere in our constitution.
I'll give you 30 seconds just to close on this issue of militia. Let me start with Olga.
The militia that went to Kawangware to kill people because they did not vote are not from NASA. They are from Jubilee. They are Mungiki.
What investigation? Linus, again, if we don't know whether something is truthful, Linus, I think if we don't know whether something is truthful, I think we should not talk about it.
Linus, let us be very, very
clear. Is it only true when it is from you?
No, but we do not know.
I don't know and you don't know.
Hold on. Can I finish?
Miguna has the floor.
Yes. Linus, I want to be very clear. Raila Odinga announced a national resistance movement. What is the meaning of national? National means the nation of Kenya. What is a resistance? Resisting what? Resisting injustice electoral injustice, inequities, decades of oppression and dictatorship by a clique that believed that they were created by God to dominate others. Now, what is a movement? A movement is simply a group of people organized to achieve an agenda. There is nothing militia about it. So when somebody like William Ruto says things about militia, let me say this. This man, William Ruto, has never fought for anything in this country. He has never fought for freedom. He has never fought for liberation. He did not fight for the constitution. He did not fight for the second liberation. He did not fight for multi-party democracy. He has absolutely no moral authority to lecture anyone about anything. But
does he make a point?
Let me just finish.
Does he make a point, Miguna?
Let me finish.
When he says, Miguna, that organized mobs,
yes,
which he called militia,
yes,
in areas like Migori,
yes,
prevented people from voting?
Who was charged at the ICC after 2007, 2008? Let us be factual. It was not Raila Odinga. It was William Ruto. What was he accused of? He was accused of leading militia to kill people, to commit genocide. That is what he was accused of. And he was not acquitted. The only reason that the charges were terminated at the ICC is because witnesses had been killed, and as a result, the ICC could not prove the case. So he's not off the hook as yet. He has absolutely no moral authority to lecture anybody on militia. Who was the other side who was also accused with him? The president. So really, these two people cannot posture, cannot come to the national forum.
But when elections don't take place,
yes,
in 4 counties,
yes,
and the deputy president says
yes,
the groups were organized,
let me tell you this,
and terms them as militia, does he make a point?
No, he does not make any point, and I would like to deconstruct him this way. The only militia we saw butchering innocent civilians were in uniform. We had Jubilee militia dressed up in military fatigues. We also saw purported police officers carrying pangas, chopping people's throats and hands. We saw young children killed. This is what we saw. Now, yesterday, or was it Thursday, what did we saw a Jubilee member of parliament do in Kandara? Assault and harass a returning officer. And yesterday, in the newspapers, your newspaper of Sunday Nation, page 19, a whole page of what Jubilee supporters did with electoral officials. So the only evidence we have, and this has come from the media, the only evidence we have of organized people butchering innocent Kenyans is from Jubilee to others, not from NASA.
Just so Muthuma, I'll come to you. You will respond, Muthuma, but because I just want us to get the deputy president in full context. Of course, he has not spoken to the local media on these issues. He's been speaking to international media, and this was an interview that he had yesterday with CNN, I think the second in 3 days.
We are telling the people of Kenya, starting with Mr. Raila Odinga, that violence is not an option in Kenya. They say it's only fools who don't learn from their mistakes. We had a situation in Kenya in 2007, 2008. We would be idiots to go back to that situation. And when Mr. Odinga says it is unarmed, if you look at the TV screens in Kenya and outside Kenya, all these people whom Mr. Raila has recruited as militia are armed. They have rocks, they have stones, they have catapults, they are attacking police stations. Last night, he exported that violence from Nyanza, where the region he comes from. And now that violence he exported it to Kawangware. Some houses were burned yesterday in Kawangware by a militia group that were chanting, "No Raila, no peace." That is not what we want in Kenya.
Okay, that's Deputy President William Ruto. Muthuma, use of the word militia.
And let's be honest, like Miguna said, we cannot forget that the same proponents of no Raila, no peace burned children alive in a church in Kiambaa. It doesn't matter what location it is. Children died. the proponents of no Raila, no peace. And by the way, somebody defines him very well. And I'll talk about his revolution. Allow me to quote, allow me kindly. It is my contention, and I quote, that unknown to many Raila supporters, friends, and compatriots, Raila had long discarded his fake revolutionary attire and adorned more kleptomaniac ones. That's page 346. Go to this other one. It is my observation that Raila loves money and power more than he loves anything else. It is my assessment he has never been interested in democratic governance for this country. Guess those words came from
I want to respond to that.
Those words came from his book, Peeling Back the Mask. What changed from what he described him and the revolution is that he's talking about?
I'll take you back to the question. I'll take you back to the question, Muthuma. And you've been insisting on the truth the whole night.
Correct.
Now, do you actually believe what we see on the screens are organized militia? Militia is a very strong word, isn't it?
And can I tell you, even Mungiki in Murang'a was an organized militia. I'm not going to sit here and tell you things that are not, but the people sat down and realized we have a homegrown problem. How do we deal with this?
Right.
It was a problem. You can organize these people very quickly.
Okay.
You see, the problem with people like Muthuma is that they don't even understand English. Kleptomania is stealing, has nothing to do with militia. So I said there were problems at the Prime Minister's office. I maintain that. It is a matter of public
You defined a person,
So,
you
so what I
defined a
did,
person.
in fact, what I did is actually say, Raila is not revolutionary. So militia is completely distant from Raila. But what did Ruto say? He says militias armed with stones, catapults, and sticks. Have you seen such a militia? Now, Muthuma says about the banning of people in churches. Where did it happen? Eldoret.
By the proponents of who?
Listen, who was the MP of Eldoret? No,
it doesn't.
It was William
Proponents of
Ruto.
who? Proponents
So the
of
problem
who?
is
Who are
that
they fighting for?
don't
Who
shout.
are they killing on his?
I was
on whose behalf?
I was quiet when you were speaking.
Truth.
The bottom line is this, Linus. William Ruto is the general of militias, at least according to the ICC. There is no court that has charged Raila Odinga with organizing or leading a militia. We are not going to run away from the national resistance movement. And we are not going to apologize for being in it. I'm going to be a general in it. And I'm very proud of it. And we are going to fight these despots day and night until we defeat them.
All right.
Without apology.
All right.
Yes.
I want to go to names that I cannot associate with any militia group. Charles.
I think, Linus, for me, my big worry is that the rhetoric of violence is growing in our country. And the other thing I'm concerned about is what I consider to be doublespeak. That we have a growing group of people, and I'll not mention any names, but it has been stated in public, who seem to preach peace in the rooftops and then quietly organize violence. And this may be from either side of the political divide. It may be from government, it may be from Jubilee Party, it may be from NASA. I think it is time that the sober people of Kenya, and those are the non-politicals, those who are not interested in political division and entrenchment, to recover their voice and say, whatever you guys do, no to violence. The moment we hear a whisper, the moment we get an indication or inclination that you are sponsoring or benefiting, you are a beneficiary of violence, we excommunicate you. No longer are you going to have a place on the table of our body politic. I think the question of zero tolerance to violence is critical. Those who want to resist, they are perfectly entitled to resist. Those who say go to courts, they are perfectly entitled to say go to courts, but do it according to the Constitution, which says peaceably and unarmed. And this is an invocation I'm making, first of all, to the leaders of both political coalitions, and then it is an invitation to Kenyans. Let us not tolerate for 1 second what happened in Kawangware. It was so hurting to me because it is my constituency. It is where I stay. And I heard the stories of the people from Kawangware. I mean, I've also heard stories of the people in Kisumu, in Bungoma, Vihiga, and so on. I've heard stories from all over the country, and it's extremely hurting. From Kibera, Mathare, elsewhere. It's extremely hurting to see people's lives being lost, property being destroyed, burnt, and so on, and neighbors turning against neighbors for the sake of transient political interests. And I would like to urge Kenyans to say no, absolutely no to any purveyor of violence, whether they speak it loud or whether they whisper it silently to the gangs that they are organizing.
Right. And you are raising concerns, very valid concerns, about the tone of the current politics, the talk of violence. And I want to take it around the panel again. Where does responsibility lie when it comes to President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga? I want to start with you, Professor Munene.
Well, both gentlemen have a responsibility to guide their followers, or whoever is supposed to be their followers, so that things don't get out of the way. There is need for people to stress respect for law. So when we have leaders telling their supposed followers to ignore the law, to do strange things, and expect that they'll continue being leaders, first of all, it's disgrace to themselves and to the people they purport to lead. So they need to send out the message, riots, misbehavior are not acceptable. We have seen sometimes people claiming to be religious leaders encouraging chaos and failure to follow the law. Everyone who holds a position of responsibility has an obligation to tone down and let people see what needs to be done. The claim that institutions are lacking is not valid. We have more than enough institutions. We have more than enough laws, and we have 2 lawyers here. What we sometimes lack, individuals who appear to be above the law, getting away with almost anything. And because they can get away with almost anything, their disciples then believe they can also get away with anything because their leader gets away with almost anything. In the process, the institutions become irrelevant. And when institutions are made irrelevant, it's not that there are no laws, that they are not there, but that's it.
Thank you, Prof. Miguna?
Linus, there is a tendency in this country from the media, from the religious community, from the talking heads, the diplomats, doublespeak, appearing to be neutral in the face of an injustice. I would like to acquit myself from such buffoonery. Why do I say so? In the face of injustice, there is no neutrality. You can't be neutral when baby Pendo is bludgeoned to death. And when the girl, the 9-year-old girl in Mathare Valley is shot while playing in her apartment. You can't be neutral when Musando is tortured to death for doing his job. You can't be neutral when Dr. Kombe is exiled then abused. You can't be neutral when CJ Maraga says there are only 3 principles on which we should govern ourselves as a democracy: strict adherence to the Constitution and the rule of law, fear of God, and working or performing your duties with integrity. We lack that in our leaders. These leaders believe that because they have power, they can define what a militia is, so they just make it up as they go along. They can call you violent because you have asserted your right to self-defense, which is guaranteed in the Constitution. Resistance is also guaranteed in the Constitution, one of which I'm exercising here. You're using speech to resist. So the bottom line is this, Linus. Unlike Mr. Kajama, I disagree. Our institutions have become worse. The only institution that seems to be working and only worked once is the Supreme Court. The police is much, much worse than even during Moi's height of dictatorship. I was a student leader at the University of Nairobi, Linus, in 1986, 1987. Moi abducted me at night and detained me and tortured me. But Moi did not.
Maybe his agents.
No, but I have even gone to court and proven the case and have been awarded damages. So,
But not Moi
so we are not
personally.
going. No, he was the president, and they were acting on his behalf. So the point is this: we were demonstrating in Nairobi in the 1980s, fighting for multi-party democracy. Moi, who was supposed to be a despot at the time, was not shooting us on the street like game. The same way these guys are doing. And this is under a new constitutional framework. Why? Many people forget that William Ruto led the YK 92. What was their greatest achievement? Breaking people's bones. So now that they have won Amanish suits and they have a few billions from our public coffers and a few lethal weapons imported from abroad, Israel and the rest, they now want respectability for brutality. And many of us are saying, no, I am not going to blame Raila Odinga when he's not the one shooting people on the street. Raila Odinga did not rig against himself on August 8th. So let's be clear. Double standards are not going to work. It doesn't matter how many times they read my book. I'm very clear and very consistent. This is not about Raila Odinga. This is about truth. This is about fairness. This is about justice.
Thank you, Miguna. I want to come to Scheaffer, and again, the reminder is where the responsibility should lie and what President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga should do.
I mean, the responsibility is first of all, just talking about responsibility right now, based on the fact that we are in a divided country, based on the fact that we are in a country that is constantly being heavily militarized, and we have witnessed it, we all feel it. Responsibility has to lie with the man in charge, because first of all, Raila is not the president of this republic. Uhuru Kenyatta has been, right? And his re-election has just been affirmed, like the announcement today, which means he is responsible. He has always been responsible. So when we start distributing responsibility, we start from who is in charge first and what is their role in whatever it is that we are struggling with. We are struggling with so many issues, and just one big one is security right now. And the fact that, you know, we were all trying to go through the term militia. Right now, it becomes a thing of who has got us to a place where certain people can say certain things or label certain people militia and walk away with it. Raila is responsible for his followers, I don't deny. Uhuru is responsible for his, I don't deny. But then Uhuru is not just a party leader, he's a president, right? So on that level, we expect some kind of leadership. And that is why we expect some kind of accountability and justice. When it comes to murders we have seen, we expect justice. When it comes to telling the country how we move forward as united, we expect it from him to show us the way forward. And something that I have to say is we need to educate ourselves on the term resistance and what resistance means. Because that narrative is being used right now to peddle the idea of it means violence. Because if we are to go down into history and just African history alone and learn, first of all, Mandela, we celebrate him. He was a resistant movement leader.
He was actually a revolutionary.
Yes.
Yeah.
He led a resistance.
Took up arms.
You know, Samora Machel talked of a luta continua. It was a resistance. Kwame Nkrumah talked of the same thing, and it was a resistance that did not necessarily, you know, first of all, you need to understand that resistance does not necessarily mean that you're heading into violence. There are so many tactics that are employed before we get to a violent state and we become violent, right? So the idea of responsibility now becomes everybody's and it is shared. I agree to an extent where I think every leader should define what they mean by what they are saying. And statements like a militia group stop people from voting is careless, unnecessary, and not wanted. A statement like you're leading the country into anarchy and you should know you cannot operate in a space where there is no law and order, like you said, very unnecessary. Because people are operating within the law. I have been in a protest in this country very recently. Luo Lives Matter. The only armory I had was a scarf, but I was tear gassed and we were shot at. And then they talk about this country belongs to people who demonstrate within the law. If the law is broken from high up the pyramid, tell me how you expect the people down here to respect that. I hate the fact that we have leaders without leadership. We have leaders without integrity. And we have leaders without the thought of the fact that this country belongs to Kenyans. And Kenyans must matter. It is something they have to realize. They must matter. And if they decide to form a resistance, understand what that means before you start labeling it a violent, anarchist, all these other things. A militia, my friends, is a group of military people. Do we know what military means? And then somebody talks about stones and machetes. I rest my case.
Right, and I'll move on to Charles. Charles, we're discussing what the top leadership of the country should do. And we do have the two protagonists, President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga. What should we see them doing in the days ahead?
First, Linus, we need to return to basics. And those basics are found in the Constitution, which we bequeathed to ourselves only 7 short years ago. It was a very popular decision, 70% of the country. I remember at the time I was opposed to the Constitution, but as Democrats, the moment the Constitution passed, it governs the life of all of us. Which is the most important chapter in that Constitution, Linus? It's chapter 4. All lawyers will tell you the Bill of Rights, which is the longest chapter in the Constitution. What is the most important right in the Bill of Rights? Article 26, the right to life. Because you can't fight for other rights, you can't enjoy other rights if you lack the right to life. So for me, it is clear that violence, we have other rights, the right to freedom of human dignity, right to property, Article 40 and so on. You can't fight for other rights if you are inflicting violence. If you're engaged in violence, you cannot pretend to be fighting for the right to life, for the right to property, for the right to dignity, because you are threatening people's lives and property. So for me, I would say what we need is a resistance movement in the mold of the Satyagraha philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. It was a non-violent resistance in the mold of Martin Luther King. I have a dream where little white boys and little black boys and girls will sing together and dance together in Georgia and so on. That is the kind of approach we need to take. But anyone who inflicts violence, whether it is a robber, an individual, whether it is somebody taking up a stone or a catapult, whether it is a police officer shooting indiscriminately, engaging in extrajudicial killing, we must say no to that. And I think it is very critical that we challenge those people who are speaking from both sides of the mouth. Because it is fashionable to speak publicly about the right to life. But deep down, to engage in what you call schadenfreude, that joy, that delight in the suffering of others. When we see people
Let me just interrupt.
Yes.
The ones talking from both sides of the mouth, do both leaders, that is Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, fit in that category?
Linus, out of a sense of responsibility, allow me not to name any individual because I'm focusing on the principle. And I don't want to personalize. This may be a sensitive issue. I want every leader, every Kenyan to examine themselves and also to examine their leaders and to be able to identify, based on this principle, who is engaging in this kind of behavior. And let me say something, Linus. Some people talk in a very demeaning way about neutrality and say that when there's injustice, you must fight for injustice. And I agree, you must fight for injustice. But fighting for injustice doesn't necessarily mean getting into the battlefield between two belligerents that are both violating rights of other people. That's why we have referees. That's why we have the Kenya Red Cross or the International Red Cross. That's why we have international observers. That's why we have people who intervene in situations of conflict. What is totally unacceptable is to pretend to be fighting injustice taking away lives, whether it is government, whether it is opposition, whether it is the Jubilee Party. It is totally unacceptable. And what I am seeing is that there is a growing desire, and I think it is indiscriminate across political alignments, of people to benefit from the imposition of unjust violence on others. And for me, that is the first thing that must stop. And I would like to demand and expect of both President Uhuru Kenyatta and Honorable Raila Odinga that they come out continuously, loudly, and without any expectation of ambiguity or contradiction, to condemn violence in all its forms, whether it is against Baby Pendo, which is extremely unfortunate, whether it is against some mwanamke in Kawangware whose property was burnt, which is quite unfortunate, not of the same magnitude, but quite unfortunate as well. Whatever kind of violence, only when you have that first situation of peace can people talk about justice. You cannot achieve justice in a situation of violence. That is a lie.
And indeed, you named President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga towards the end of your contribution. Let me go now to Olga.
Kanjama say there is no peace, there is no justice without peace. I want to say the responsibility in this nation lies on one word: justice. When you give justice, nobody will fight. I have been involved in most of the demonstrations that we have had lately in this town, Linus. And I want to tell you, and Kenyans know, that we have left wherever we have left as NASA to demand the implementation of our irreducible minimums, which is our right. We have never carried any stone, no gun, no anything along the streets of Nairobi. And I have been tear gassed every day without any stone. We've not done anything. So when you talk about peaceful demonstration, the fact of the matter is this: the Jubilee government cannot stand anyone questioning them, even by just saying a word. They only want to use power because they don't know anything else except using guns and using police to shoot people. So responsibility of peace in this nation does not lie in anybody. In any case, and like my sister, I do not recognize anybody called the president because he did not win. So responsibility lies on nothing but justice. And let me explain something that many people have said about our people in Migori. Actually, when was it, the rally that we had, when Raila announced the formation of our national resistance movement, which as Miguna is, I am another lead general, and we will really resist this government. What he asked people is, do not stop anybody who wants to vote. He said in public rally in Uhuru Park, he said, do not stop anybody who wants to vote, but stay in your houses, my followers, and pray and do not vote. The reason that there were two things that made our people in Migori, Nyanza, and Kisumu come out to resist the voting. One was that those people were actually intimidated by thousands and thousands of military. In any case, as Miguna said, Jubilee civilians had already put on military uniforms even before. Women, men, MPs, they were actually swearing to themselves that they are beginning their militia group. So they are the ones who have it, not us, because we don't even know how to put on those uniforms. Now, our people were intimidated by a lot of soldiers who were in their cities in Migori, Kisumu. Why were they given, why were police sent there? If all that IBC wanted was people who wanted to vote for, why did the government send militaries for 2 days into Kisumu, Nyanza, and because they wanted to attack the people? Number two, from what we have seen in Kenya, and I congratulate those people of those 4 counties. I wish all Kenyans could stand for themselves like the people of Luo, Nyanza. What we have seen in this election, anytime a polling station opens, like it happened in Machakos, in Ukambani area, and in Western Kenya, because people allowed them, IBC, to open the polling station, whether 1 person voted or 0 person voted, the fact that the polling station opened, they listed 900, 200, 500, 2,000 people voted. So the people of Nyanza said, we do not want exaggeration of votes, and they went ahead and exaggerated. They even had some 900, which never happened. So those were the only reasons why the people of those 4 counties refused. Why were they sending militaries? Why did they not send them all over Kenya?
Because there was
Now,
violence in the process.
There was
wasn't
no
there?
violence.
There was blocking of roads. We saw that.
It happened after the people saw the police. So they had to defend themselves. Now, the other thing that I want to emphasize in this session, many times people say that Raila is very desperate for power, and I think he actually said that Raila is more desperate for power than he is for anything else in Kenya. The reality is, who said it? Or the reality of the matter is, who is more desperate for power than the people who, even after the Supreme Court has annulled their stolen victory, they still cannot say, let us sit down. What was difficult with Jubilee saying, fine, we have been found out. Our rigging has been found out. We agree the Supreme Court Justice Maranga, who never lies, said the truth, and the four judges. In any case, when I hear these people saying that only 4 judges overturned the decision of Kenyans, how many did they give the ruling in ICC? Were they 100 or were they 1 million? They were only 2. So why are they blaming our 4 judges for standing for justice? Anyway, my point is this. When the Supreme Court had annulled the elections, all that Jubilee would have said is, yes, Kenyans, we have agreed, we've been caught. Now, let us sit and all agree on ways that the next election will be done with utmost credibility and more transparency than it was on the 8th. All that would have led us to do is to reorganize IEBC, and that is what we asked. But they went ahead because they are desperate for power. They are desperate to steal more. They are desperate to enhance corruption. They are desperate to control Kenyans. They went ahead and even performed and forced IEBC to do, they did not force, IEBC agreed. No Kenyan is forced to do anything. IEBC and them agreed that they will do elections that is more shambolic than the one that was before.
Right.
So
let me go now to Muthuma, and again a reminder after all that from Olga is that we're talking President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga.
And I would have actually, anyway, when we talk about responsibility, it starts with me and you, Linus. And again, it's wrong to think that we are nowhere within the fraternity of law. It is wrong. We are also captured in there. So responsibility begins with me and you. Having said that, I think there's a narrative that we are trying to really push that Uhuru stole an election. We went to the Supreme Court. Oh, he did. And I've never had neither the IEBC nor the Supreme Court fervently saying that he stole. In fact, Madam Olga, Uhuru was found to have done nothing wrong. That was actually the verdict from the Supreme Court. So this narrative of keeping hammering and bashing, same thing somebody can say Raila stole an election, but he never did. There was nowhere that they said Raila stole. So it is again wrong. It is not truthful to say the things that you're saying. Anyway, Linus, when we come to the orbits, when we come, that's IBC. They are the ones who are whatever. When we come to the orbits of law, we have to realize that in a democracy like the one we are talking about in Kenya, it is fervent upon us, or people of goodwill, to follow the law and the Constitution to the hilt. We have got no any other avenue, Olga, that is provided on how this country can go forward. And by the way, you can take the following of the law to the last prescription of our daily lives. Tell you what, somebody said a very good thing. In any democracy where you want the law to be followed and people don't follow it, you resort to the loss of lives. And that actually comes to even the way we do things at home. If you have a sick child and you don't follow laws and instruction and you've been given medicine, guess what you'll have in your hands? You'll have a fatality. If you drive your car, these are laws we are talking about. We operate within the laws or people die. Simple as that. Even if you buy the best car and you drive it against the laid instructions and the laws that have been provided by the manufacturer, sooner or later, you'll be in a fatality, period. So responsibility, and it is bad when we sit here and start, pushing responsibilities to other people. Yes, at the end of the day, the president, we can say he has the ultimate responsibility because he's the president, but so does Raila. And we agree he has a massive following. He must sit down and actually direct. You have so many, millions actually of Kenyans who just wait for him to say a word and they follow. But at the end of the day, he must understand that the words that come out of his mouth can either build or destroy. So when you tell people, go out there and make sure there are no elections happening, we saw in Uhuru Park, he whispered to an MP, Babu, and Babu went exactly and took the microphone and said, ensure those papers do not arrive. Ensure they don't come in. What else did you expect when you say ballot papers, or you're sure ballot papers never get to a polling station or where they are supposed to go? You must use either violence or you must make the environment hostile. Two things. And we saw that happening. But the one thing that I'm liking is this. If we continue with this narrative, we are going to isolate an entire region, which is wrong, because somebody got played. All other counties actually ended up exercising that constitutional right. And it's captured very well in our Bill of Rights, among the right to information,
if
the
you
right
look
to
at
vote.
the map, if I can just correct you there, if you look at that map showing the voter turnout across the country, if our Director Jackson can just go very quickly to it, it actually does show.
Are we talking about voter turnout lines?
It actually does show
places where vote
there is the
never
map.
took place.
There is the map.
Right.
Because low voter turnout, sitting at home was also an expression.
And I agree, but that is the concept. That's what I'm talking about. Allow, open up, let people make up their minds. Let me tell you something, Linus.
What I'm saying is it's not accurate to say that it's one region.
No, I'm talking about places where voting never took place.
Yes.
That's what I said. It's not places where they had low voter turnout. That can be understood. I'm talking about areas where it never took place. And that's what I say. If you are talking about engaging people for them not to practice or for them not to go out and be able to work on their constitutional rights, then just open up, allow them to go, give them free will. And guess what? When I talk about free will, it's not only democratic, but guess what? Olga would tell you, free will, even God himself cannot joke with it. He allows you to do what you want to do. Free will, give them free will. If they don't want to vote, let it remain as is. Allow people. Stop holding them in shackles that because you say they go left, they must go left. Allow them, give them free will. Open up.
Right. And spirituality kicks in right there again with Gabriel Muthuma. Let me now take the panel to the final part of this discussion, and that will be the IEBC, which once again carried out an election that is on the 26th and announced a winner this time, issuing the certificate, winner certificate for the second time. And I just want us to listen for a moment to Chebukati, who had concerns just before the election and what he had to say about those concerns today. Let's listen to Chebukati.
I've made several attempts to make critical changes, but all my motions have been defeated by a majority of the commissioners. Under such conditions, it's difficult to guarantee free, fair, and credible elections. Without critical changes in key secretariat staff, free, fair, and credible elections will surely be compromised. I therefore call on the staff who have been adversely mentioned to step aside to allow this project team to function without interference. I can confidently say that on the 26th of October this year, before polling commenced, I was content then as I am now that we had done everything that was required to ensure that every Kenyan would have the opportunity to exercise their constitutional rights under Article 38 of the Constitution.
Right, that's Wafula Chebukati speaking on October the 18th and then speaking today, October the 30th, raising questions about his levels of confidence. On the 18th, they said that he did not have confidence that the IEBC can deliver a free and credible election. October 30th, he says they have delivered a free and fair election. Professor Munene.
Chebukati, it turns out, is increasingly a wise man. He sees sense. And remember when he was saying that, there were divisions, he says, there were divisions within the commission. So they have ironed out their divisions. It appears he was having some problems with the chief executive, who decided to step aside for the duration.
No, he went on leave.
Yeah, he's not there. So he is on leave, and if that was the issue, if the presence of Chiloba was the issue, then I think Chiloba did a wise thing, maybe with some advice from somewhere, I don't know where. So when Chiloba left, then Chebukati could feel that now he's in control. And when he was speaking, saying he was confident they have done the right thing. And in fact, if you compare the two things, compare Chebukati now and Chebukati in August. These are two different Chebukatis. This one is confident. He even looks energetic, and he is in control. So it is that sense of control that he has, and being sure that he has done everything expected of him and the commission, and in consultation with everybody, the commissioners and such things, and as ordered by the Maraga court to do it within the specified time, and order to do it properly, but not to receive orders of whether maximum or irreducible, whatever, not under the direction of anyone, is to conduct a fresh election. He was satisfied, that's what he was saying today, that although he may have had some problem, doubt, about 2 weeks ago, they have sorted out their internal differences and challenges, and therefore he could speak honestly and say they were able to do it. He also did admit, the reason why some areas did not vote was because of the violence. Although in Kisumu, some people voted in Kisumu, you know that. So it is not true that the entire...
Don't you think, Professor Munene, that we have seen this of Chebukati before? You remember the letter to the CEO?
Yeah.
After the Supreme Court decision, he raised all those issues. And when the pressure came on him, a few days later, he did say that the questions have been addressed. We have seen this before.
Yeah, I think you can say that. But if the chief executive responded to him, and my understanding is that he responded to him, and probably responded to the satisfaction, probably. I've not seen the details of those things. But he did raise that question that after the Supreme Court said what it did, there was some kind of blame shifting within the structure. And that blame shifting was not very good for the commission. So they did sort out their differences for a while. And that's why they came back together, as far as I could tell. Now, some of those differences were exacerbated by pressure from external. When we had one group of people pinpointing, Chiloba must go, Chiloba must go. Even if Chiloba wanted to stay, for the good of the country, for the good of the commission, I think he did the right thing. Now I do not know whether he was pushed from inside or it was his own volition, but I think it was very good for him that he took leave, because it seems that when he took that leave, harmony visited the commission.
Miguna, your take. Two Chebukatis, that's what Professor Munene does say.
Linus, 2 quick points and then please. You see, it is very instructive when we talk about violence that in the entire Nyanza region, not one police officer was killed. But how many civilians have been killed? You see, this is important. When people talk about slayings, they talk about whatever. when you talk about a region where more than 40 people have been shot dead, and not one police officer has been injured or killed, and then you blame the people who have been killed, I take great umbrage at Kajama seeming to compare life to property. Because in the Bill of Rights, there is no property. There is no life to property mentioned under the Bill of Rights. It's right to life. And all freedom or all the struggles for liberation, whether it is struggle against slavery, whether it was First World War, Second World War, whether it was colonialism, whether it was apartheid, it must be even Stephen, as Malcolm X said. If you're fighting me with weapons, we will fight, we will resist. There is no way you're going to tell me to turn the other cheek, and then when I resist, you call me violent, and yet I'm being killed. That is just silly. So now, coming back to Chebukati. So we are not going to apologize for resisting. Now, Chebukati said that all his motions have been defeated by the majority of the commissioners. He has not stated today, that one is what he said on October 18th. On October 30th, he has not said how he has converted the majority of the commissioners he said were being controlled from outside by political actors. Now he has made them to support his motions. Number two, he has said all the critical changes at the commission, only critical changes at the commission, would guarantee a free, fair, and credible election. And one of the critical changes he mentioned, for instance, is that the staff that have been adversely mentioned should step aside. Step aside means resign. We know that about 9 senior staff have been mentioned. One of them is Muati, who heads ICT. One of them is Kisait. And there are many. Have they stepped aside? No. How about the CEO, Mr. Chiloba? He has not stepped aside. In fact, evidence discloses that even when the ballots arrived in Nairobi, he's one of the people that went there to welcome the ballots after he said he was going to go on leave. Being on leave does not mean you are not accessing your office, does not mean you cannot instruct staff, does not mean you cannot rig electronically from elsewhere. So number 3, or maybe 4, he stated that he has been given wrong legal advice and that he has been forced to accept wrong legal advice by the majority of the commissioners. And he gave the examples of the many instances when he has gone to court and have lost cases because of this wrong legal advice. And we remember last week when the Supreme Court could not marshal a majority. He had not filed any responding material, even though he was a respondent, and only Ms. Nkata Maina filed responding materials. And there are a lot to be said about Ms. Maina. But on Chebukati, did he tell us today how all of a sudden the incompetent legal advice have become competent and where this illegal advice is being sought and obtained from? Has he said how the majority of the commissioners now support his motions to obtain adequate legal advice? And one legal advice that he did not get, because this is critical, Article 138(2) of the Constitution says, a presidential election must be held in all constituencies. This presidential election was not the so-called election, the exercise. It was not held in Migori, it was not held in Kisumu, it was not held in Siaya, it was not held in Homa Bay, yet there are illegitimate Form 34 A's and B's being generated and posted on IBC portal that he has not explained where they came from. So in the whole, what I heard the chairman say is what in an inelegant language would be called hogwash.
Let me go to Scheaffer now, and we're discussing Chebukati. He did talk about being made a punching bag.
Yeah.
He says he's being described as too weak by his critics. and others describe him as a credible person of integrity. That's what he said of the descriptions within the IEBC itself. Period of 18 days, he set the terms, and he said things changed. Do you believe him?
Absolutely not. I mean, who would? Because, first of all, Chebukati needs to stop worrying about what Raila thinks, what Uhuru thinks, and he needs to start worrying about what the Kenyan people think. Because he ran an election for the Kenyan people. He ran an election for 40-something million people in this country to participate, those who are qualified to vote. 46 who are qualified to vote. And these people, majority of them, did not feel confident enough in his leadership, did not feel confident enough in the institution that's supposed to run this election, that it was going to be credible. So they didn't show up. And that, first of all, apart from the fact that now it wants to be bagged as a NASA boycott, which is a lie, that shows him that he failed to rally up confidence in the people who are supposed to participate in the election he was supposed to deliver. It is a problem he needs to address. So I don't know why he's worried about what politicians think. He should be worried about what I think a voter who did not show up, because I don't believe in his ability to deliver. My vote got lost in the Bomas Triangle in the August 8th election. Right? I did not want my vote to get lost somewhere in another triple triangle this time round. He failed to tell me that if he could not even tell us he was going to deliver a credible election, and then the timing is also very off. Akombe had a very elaborate memo that talked about why, yes, 26 we will have an election. But when she was asked, do you feel it will be credible? She said, absolutely not. Because an election, first of all, the basic thing she said that was very important, before even details, she said, an election that does not involve everybody else, that makes other people feel disenfranchised, is not credible. So that on that fact alone, she said, we need to look into that. And she walked away from it. And then we talk about Chiloba leaving. And you know, the timing of all these things is interesting, because he leaves and he leaves, he goes on leave. He has not told us what he did with our 44 billion, by the way, but he's gone on leave. A few days to election, the 26th one. And then Chebukati is still here, concerned about the fact that some people think he's an integral leader. Some people worry that he's weak. I'm sorry. Have you asked the Kenyans what they think of you? Because those are the people who didn't show up. Apart from the ones who showed up, which is okay, but the people who didn't show up, do you actually think that the Kenyan voter is so stupid that somebody would just say, don't vote, and they're not voting? Why do people always assume that the Kenyan voter does not know what they want? And the people who talk about this Kenyan voter in this, in like a disconnected way, have they gone and talked to this Kenyan voter? I have. I was on a campaign trail this year, right? And I talked to this Kenyan voter, and trust and believe, the Kenyan voter knows what they want. This idea of assuming that they are illiterate, that they are vulnerable, that they are easy to manipulate is a hoax. Because there are people like me who know what I want, and then there are people like that Mama Mboga, because we keep referring to the voter as a Mama Mboga, who knows that I don't have to waste my time in this. My own Mama Mboga told me she's not going to vote, not because she does not like the people on the ballot, but because she feels that it is not going to result into what she has chosen, or into her choice being affirmed. So, there are things that we can't just speak about amorphously. The voter knows what they want. The voter knows what they expect of Chebukati. Did Chebukati deliver this to the voter? He absolutely did not. So, I mean, their timing has been off. It's a problem.
Let me move to the right side of my panel, and I just want to quote Chebukati. You may all like this, because it says, I request that you join me in acknowledging the following persons and groups that have worked tirelessly in ensuring the successful completion of the fresh presidential election, now commonly known as the FPE. 1, God the Almighty, who has seen us through this process. What did you think of Chebukati's speech today?
I think Linus Chebukati was trying to be practical. He was also trying to be nostalgic. He was recognizing he's come through, and the whole country has come through, and his commission has come through a very difficult moment. He felt he had done a good job in the difficult circumstances that he faced. I think, Linus, the first critical thing that Kenyans have to reflect on is that free and fair elections, which are credible, which are acceptable to everyone, are delivered by an electoral ecosystem. And an ecosystem is not formed by one element of the ecosystem alone. It is a complex system. So Chebukati was facing a number of challenges. One was a challenge of a growing, very strident rhetoric, political rhetoric between the political players. And both sides of the political divide were guilty, if I may say so, of this very strident political rhetoric. He was and to correct something that Miguna said, the Constitution has several rights, actually two constitutive rights from Article 26 to Article 57. I had Miguna saying, which really surprised me, that there's no right to property in the Constitution. I think I misheard him, because there is both right to life and property. And actually, when you go to the Penal Code, Linus, I taught criminal law to university students, I practice criminal law. One of the defenses to an offense of manslaughter or murder is defense of person or property. And this is something that is for 1,000 years from the common law legal system. There is that understanding that if you take away someone's property, you take away his means of a livelihood. So you basically are indirectly, slowly taking away his life or his quality of life. And that is why it is something in all universal legal systems that somebody is allowed to use grave force to defend their property, not just to defend their life, and also to defend the life or property of another who is under grave and imminent danger, either of death or of significant harm to their property. That's why in America you have things like stand your ground law, that if you're in your home and the intruder comes in and you need to use serious force, even if it is fatal, to repulse the intruder, you are allowed to do so. And it is actually a total defense to any criminal liability. What I'm trying to say is that Chebukati was in this situation where you have people threatening the life and property of others, whether it is state forces, whether it is violent protesters, whether it is people reacting or purporting to react to protesters who are peaceful in a violent manner. It doesn't matter. There was this difficult electoral environment. Lying had not been discharged or set aside to hold elections in 60 days. Some disagree with the way he went about it. Some think that the moment Raila withdrew, that amounted to abandoning the quest and there should have been fresh nominations. But the commission had to take a decision. The challenge, Linus, that Chebukati has been facing, and I've been reflecting on this, is that the entire country is engaging in an exercise of psychological projection. We are projecting our fears, our hopes, our disappointment, our anger, our joys, everything touching on the electoral process, ultimately on one man, Chebukati. So all those people who are so aggrieved with the violence, with the electoral injustice that they perceive has taken place, they personalize it in Chebukati. And those who feel satisfied with the electoral process, again, they personalize it on Chebukati. When Chebukati seems to be leaning one way, you notice Jubilee people beginning to attack him.
Don't you think,
when he leans
Charles,
the other way, NASA
Charles,
people attack him.
Charles, in all fairness to Chebukati's accusers, isn't he sometimes held to his own word? He spoke on the 18th and said, I don't have the confidence of delivering a free and credible election. Today he turns around and says, I have delivered a free and credible election.
If you listen,
the numbers issue, remember the 6.5 and then 7, which ends up being 7.4.
I think we've discussed the numbers issue before in this show today, so let me not go there, but let me talk about the question of confidence. I think you're saying, I cannot guarantee. And anyone who understands legal language understands that guarantee means I can't assure at this point. The situation may change later, but at this point, I can't assure Kenyans. So when he said he cannot guarantee, he was not saying that this is a situation that cannot change, but that at this moment, this is where we are. And he was demanding some kind of reform. Whether you like the way he went about it, he subsequently said he has now reassured himself because certain people have stepped aside in the commission. His project team was running the elections. You know, when I did the observer mission, I actually spoke to a number of presiding officers, and I really wanted to hear from their perspective. Is this new exercise, has it been organized better or worse? I was talking about the technical side, leave alone the environment of violence and intimidation that is, in my view, attributable to politicians mainly. And many of them said, wow, this time there's a better organization. We have a better booklet telling us what our roles are. We have checklists. We know what we need to do. We came to our polling stations on time. So actually, the only thing the presiding officers were really bemoaning was the fact that the voter turnout was very low. But they were saying otherwise, we've been facilitated pretty well. So you could see that Chebukati, despite all the statements he made, he kept repeating, technically, the Electoral Commission is prepared to hold elections. But I can't guarantee them because of external environmental matters. He now believes that those environmental matters, at least the ones that were within his control, he mentioned an exception, the question of violence and voter intimidation in some areas. But he believes the ones that were within the control of his commission, he delivered. One may be happy or not, and I expect half of the country is extremely disappointed in Chebukati because they didn't even vote. So that is a sign. That is a sign more than any other thing that they were so disappointed with the whole process. And the other half, who voted and feel they exercised their Article 38 political rights, seem to be quite happy. So it's almost as if, because elections in advanced democracies, and Kenya is going there, whereby you have very close elections between the winner and the runner-up, are almost split 50-50, you'll always have at least half of the country so deeply disappointed in the electoral management body. That has been our history in Kenya. I hope we can get out of it. We are not there yet. So I feel that Chebukati is a soft target. He may have done certain things wrong. For sure, he has done some things wrong. But I feel he takes more than his fair share of criticism because we project all our hopes and frustrations on the shoulders of the man.
All right, Charles, and indeed we are discussing the chairperson of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, who did release the results this afternoon, declaring President Uhuru Kenyatta re-elected with 7.4 million votes. That is about 38% of the voter turnout. We now go to Olga. We're discussing Chebukati.
Thank you, Linus. Chebukati has just shot himself on the foot all the time. He himself said that every time he brings motions in their panel, he is shot down by 4 commissioners. I imagine 4 commissioners who had then been compromised by whomsoever. So Chebukati is now telling us that he accepted to be compromised alongside his 4 commissioners. That is why he was able to conduct the elections. Chebukati himself has many times written different memos, comes out and disowns them, or sometimes he says that I wrote the memo. But what I am saying is I hope this time someone will take the man of Chebukati to court, and I hope indeed that 5-year term that he wished for himself would be made 20 years, because he deserves it. He has lied to himself, he has lied to Kenyans, he has misled his own self, and the Bible says that a person who is not truthful is as weak as a broken leg. That is what Chebukati is. Now, I agree with Munene Professor Munene Chebukati indeed was confident. I remember someone called me today. I did not watch again. Someone called me from outside the country this evening before I came and said that the way Chebukati was confident today was a clear indication that all along Chebukati was pretending to be independent. He was not. He was always wanting a way of of pacifying Kenyans so that he could conduct these elections for Jubilee. I did not watch again. I was told that. As for staff that Chebukati claims or that claim to have left, one of them is Chiloba. On the same day of elections, our own political director of political affairs, Honorable Junet Mohammed, did a press conference and said that we have evidence which we will produce and which we will defend, that Chiloba was calling presiding officers and returning officers on the day of elections and giving them instructions. The Chiloba who lied that he went on leave. But even if Chiloba went on leave, what time did he go on leave? At what time did he go on leave? Really, if we want to be fair as Kenyans, let us not laugh lies. He went on leave after he had done his work and prepared the rigging, and so he just said that he wanted to step aside so that you could be instructing his presiding officers, and we shall prove that. As for the people that we wanted to leave IEBC, how I just wish that Jubilee would have said, we have confidence in our numbers, the 30% that they got, and the 30% that have been voting for them from 2007. And they said, can we send these people home, let them step aside, then we are left with Chebukati and his 4 commissioners who had been compromised and who now brought Chebukati into the mission of not of shooting down motions in the IBC boardroom. It is very sad.
Let me just interrupt you, Olga, and bring this on up. You are a member of the selection panel that actually picked Wafula Wanyonyi Chebukati to be IBC chairman.
Yes.
How did you miss all these things that you're now projecting as deficiencies of the man?
First of all, let me clarify that the parliamentary parliamentary act that was implemented or that was created before elections by the 2 parties said that we needed to give 11 names. So we had to give 11 names. And out of those 11 names, we gave the list from the best performers at the interview and in their resumes until the last. Someone needs to tell, Uhuru needs to tell Kenya what number was Chebukati. Number 1.
Does
number
it matter?
2,
he really made the shortlist,
no,
didn't he?
Yes,
he made
did.
the shortlist.
Number 2, immediately, it's so very unfortunate, but I will say it. Immediately, one of the things that we did was to really search for the integrity of all the people of IBC. And I remember that panel worked very hard with the anti-corruption, with media. You even came to speak to us about any information that the media had about any of the applicants that we had shortlisted rather, sorry. And I remember immediately we had finalized the list, we got a lot of complaints. We got numerous complaints on the conduct of the man of Chebukati. We got other numerous complaints on the conduct of Connie, but they came, Kenyans did not bring for us those petitions. We had many petitions about other people. Those petitions came later. At that time, we realized we had already shortlisted these people, and we had this confidence that the best performers would have been employed. Anyway, now that the Uhuru, knowing what he did, picked from number last, working upward. He actually literally picked it from number last, working upward. Although that is not even a problem. The problem is, I am now starting to believe that the complaints that Kenyans brought after we had shortlisted some of these people could have been true. Although then we did not believe, because the conduct of Chebukati is quite questionable.
And in all fairness to Chebukati, there is water under the bridge. We're discussing his performance with regard to the last 2 elections he has handled. And I want to bring in now Gabriel Muthuma. And Gabriel, in addressing and discussing Chebukati, maybe you can answer the question that he posed. And he said, why is the IEBC never seen as a fair umpire of Kenyan elections?
The main reason is because whatever judgment IBC will give, it's more or less of what the former Chief Justice Mutunga said, either way the decision you make in the Supreme Court will have a big portion with you and a big portion who will not agree with you. And I believe that is what our good friend Chebukati may be going. That's, I think, the statement that Chebukati gave, I think that's what he was alluding to. But the problem that you've just actually posed a very good question. Chebukati was shortlisted by a group of parliamentarians and other professionals, starting with the likes of Olga. So when you push that and advance it to another level of the person of the president, you are also lying to yourself that you did not do a good job. You did a shoddy job, and every person will tell you, if you shortlist for me candidates, I can pick any, all right, because you have already done the work. So I can pick any person who actually is within that shortlist. So I think as we move to chastise Chebukati, and this discussion line as we had it on Thursday, we are too quick to point fingers, but we are not also quick to point blame at the people who hired him. Now, the other thing that comes to mind is Chebukati has never been an issue. No person, probably there have been, but I've never had any person running across town saying Chebukati must go.
I did.
It was Chiloba must go. And that's what started. And that was the song that we had. Where the problem started with Chebukati was because he refused to resign. That is where all the missiles started coming at him. The statement that you've said, when he refused to resign, the statement that you've said, what you said on the 18th, we should also be mindful to the fact that a day before the elections, he actually said why he had rejuvenated his confidence after meeting the principals, the major players. And he said, I have been assured of 1, 2, 3, security being paramount. Those are the same notes that we read from Akombe herself when she went to Nyanza, trying to recruit or trying to the conference that she was holding for the IEBC staff, and we saw how that went. We saw the violence. We saw the kind of damages that were actually perpetrated by the people down there. So really, after all this were exhausted, Chebukati came and said, I feel I am confident and I can hold this and I'll run with it and I'll finish. And he has done that which he was employed to do. We may not agree with it. Many people may actually take stances. It may divide. But the fact is this, that Chebukati has done his job. How he has done it may be put to question for years to come. But we should not again act wholly as if we knew and talk as if he was not handling that work. Coming to the last one, like Kanjama has said, Chebukati also went ahead and explained to us, all listening, that he had actually implemented several things within the IEBC. For instance, after Chiloba left, he had actually come up with a project team that was going to run this show. And they were reporting directly to him. So we need to give credence to some of the changes that has happened. As everybody was talking about the amendment laws, which I'm glad the president never signed, because it was goodwill. He would never reign to go and sign that amendment. Whether it becomes law after 14 days, that's an argument for another day. But the fact that he showed goodwill by not signing it, that should actually count for something. Finalizing, Linus, we must agree that there is some things that we've seen, and personally I've been able to see. We did not have, and this is after Chebukati was telling us some other people left. Did you see any leaked memo? There was no leaked memo. Albeit the fact that there are so many memos listed.
Other people is Rosalie Nakombe?
Well, I'm not mentioning names, but that's what Chebukati, okay? Now, even Chiloba left. Whether you want to say he went on leave, that's something else. But there is a fervent truth in it that probably there were actually moles that were actually making Chebukati's work harder. But as I finalize, let's wait for the Supreme Court.
Let me
Right,
clarify.
and Charles, it's 7 minutes actually past midnight, and I want us to be fair to our viewers because it's a working day tomorrow, which is why we have to bring this to a conclusion, and it is the Supreme Court where we end tonight. And very briefly, not more than 30 seconds, I'll start with you, Gabriel, going this way. Yes or no, do you think because you've all said this will head to the Supreme Court, should it head there? Another nullification, do you expect?
I do not think so, primarily because of the boycott. A candidate boycotted the election.
Thank you. Olga?
Amos 5:7 says, there are those who turn justice into, I'd said that there are those who reject justice, is another scripture I wanted to say. Supreme Court and the law courts of Kenya will annul these elections outrightly, unless, I don't even think they'll be bribed. They will. And we'll go back to elections and we'll continue fighting until we get justice in Kenya.
Charles?
Linus, there are three things that the court will look at. Or
In
courts
30
always
seconds.
Look at. Yes, in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, the third second.
Yeah.
One is the facts, the second is the law, and the third is this reality called the environment that tends to affect the decisions of judges. I've assessed the facts, I've assessed the law, I've also looked at the environment under which the judge is operating, and giving my pragmatic assessment, I would say it is 50-50. If I was advising a client, whether it is Jubilee or NASA, I would tell them, don't rest on your laurels. There's an almost equal chance that this Supreme Court can uphold or reject the election. And let me say, because I needed 5 seconds to just say something else, when the selection panel selected Chebukati, his name was transferred to the president as one of 2 names for chair. And the selection panel transferred 8 other names for which the president was to pick 6
commissioners.
For member.
Yes.
So that the actual position is that Chebukati was one of 2.
Yep.
He was selected, his name was forwarded to parliament, they also vetted him. And there was a bipartisan agreement by parliament to recommend him for appointment.
Okay, that's a clarification. So I'll have to actually just remind everyone of the question. The question is on what you expect from the Supreme Court when this ends up there as a battle the second time. Nullification or not?
I mean, nullification if it is found void of meeting the criteria of a valid election or a credible election. Absolutely valid. It will be termed a void the same way, because we are not talking about the court saying no, this was credible election because they had already nullified another one. No, I think the reason why they nullified another one, the first one was very clear, and that if those are the same reasons that they find that there are still unanswered questions, there are still irregularities, there are still illegalities, there are people who've broken the law somewhere in running us to this process, of course, the court has its mandate and its ability outrightly to just say, this did not meet the threshold we set the other time, so go back and fix it. It could go either way, but I believe the law will still be upheld.
Scheaffer and Kanjama, 50-50. Miguna?
Linus, first of all, when you were hired by the NTV or Nation Media House, you may have been ranked first. But if you come and steal in this organization, you will not rely on the fact that you ranked first. We judge people based on their record, and Chebukati has failed 1,000,000%. Now, on the petition, there will be a petition. There will be more than one petition. I'm aware of at least 2 as I speak, and they will be nullified 99.9%. I have also analyzed the facts. I've had access to a lot of evidence, and I can tell you the law is crystal clear. This choreographed sham, the exercise, was done worse than the August 8th one. They nullified the August 8th one. There is no way they will be able to give this charade a green light.
Thank you. Professor Munene?
Yeah, 2 or 3 things. One,
30 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's either Jeremiah or Isaiah who says that you have laws, you have agreement on how things should be done. But there are always people who deliberately, not out of ignorance, they know it, go ahead and do the wrong thing, knowing that they are doing the wrong thing. We have too many of them in Kenya, in that sense. Second, on your question.
That's not an actual Bible quote, is it?
No.
He's writing his own Bible.
No, it is in the Bible. Now, on the whether the court will decide one or the other, it's a toss-up. But I think this time they will not nullify it. They will not. So it is 60-40 for me to uphold the election.
Right.
Finally, the country is safe. It's in good hands. It will continue to be safe. It will continue to be stable. There will be some people trying to create chaos. That's normal. But the country is safe.
Thank you. Professor Munene, Miguna, Scheaffer Okore, Charles Kanjama, Olga Karani, and finally, Gabriel Muthuma. We thank you very, very much for sitting with us this whole evening to try and make sense of the events following the release of the presidential election results declaring President Uhuru Kenyatta re-elected with 98% of the vote, 7.4 million votes cast. And on behalf of the NTV team here, including our anchors Mark and Gladys, we want to thank you. Please do join us tomorrow morning when AM Live kicks in with Trevor Ombija. My name is Linus Kaikai. Thank you for being with us. Have a good night.